My name is Brooke Hayes. I am 28 years old. And 5 minutes before my sister fainted at our family dinner, she was laughing at me like I was the most embarrassing person at the table, not quietly, not in a joking way that could be brushed off later. She looked me straight in the face, in front of relatives passing mashed potatoes and apple pie around my parents' dining room, and asked how long I planned to keep pretending that random freelance design gigs were a real career. A few people gave those awkward little laughs people make when they know something is cruel, but don't want to be the first one to say so. My parents said nothing. They just stared down at their plates like silence was a family tradition. That was the part that hurt worse than the insult itself. I had spent years swallowing comments like that, letting everyone call it sibling rivalry, letting her turn every small win of mine into a punchline. But that night, I had something in my purse she didn't know about. Something official. Something printed in color, with a company logo, a salary number, and my name on it.so. When she smiled and said no major company would ever take me seriously, I put my hand flat on the table and hit it hard enough to make every fork jump. Then I reached into my bag, pulled out the envelope, and slid it into the center of the table. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I just said, "Then look at this." She grabbed it with that same smug expression she always wore when she thought she was about to embarrass me. But as her eyes moved across the paper, her fingers started shaking. Her face went pale, and before anyone even understood what she had read, she collapsed back into her chair like the truth had knocked the air right out of her. But the paper was only the beginning. The Sunday dinner started the way every Sunday dinner at my parents' house in Naperville always started, with too much food, too many relatives talking over each other, and everyone pretending the uncomfortable things in our family didn't exist as long as the chicken was warm and the apple pie looked homemade. My mother, Patricia, had made roasted chicken and mashed potatoes. My father, Greg, kept refilling glasses of iced tea like that was his official job. My Aunt Linda brought green beans with almonds. Uncle Mark showed up with corn on the cob wrapped in foil. My cousins were already arguing in the living room about football before we even sat down. It was the kind of middle-class suburban Illinois family dinner that looked sweet from the outside. Potluck dishes on the counter. Kids running through the hallway. Someone asking whether the Bears would ever have a normal season. Someone else laughing too loudly at a joke that wasn't that funny. And me, sitting there with a sealed envelope in my purse, trying to keep my hands calm. I had planned this moment carefully. I wasn't going to announce it right away. I wanted dinner to settle first. I wanted everyone to have a plate, to be relaxed, to be looking at me when I finally told them I had accepted an offer from Luminina Brands as a brand marketing manager. It was the kind of job I had dreamed about since college. A real corporate role, a respected brand, a salary that made me feel like all the late nights and rejected applications had finally meant something. But across the table, Riley was already watching me like she could smell good news before I said a word. My younger sister had always had a gift for turning a room toward herself. She was 26, worked in sales, and talked about her job like she was closing million-dollar deals every week, even though I knew from things she had accidentally let slip that most of her months ended with missed quotas and excuses. That never stopped her from bragging. Halfway through dinner, she started telling Uncle Mark about some client she claimed was definitely going to sign next week. Her voice got louder with every sentence. She said her manager trusted her with the important accounts. She said sales wasn't for sensitive people because real jobs required pressure. Then she looked at me, not directly at first, just a sideways glance over her fork, like she was setting a trap. Aunt Linda asked how work was going. I smiled and kept my voice casual. I said it had been busy, that I had wrapped a branding package for a local wellness company and was working on a product mock-up project. Riley gave a little laugh into her water glass, small enough to deny, but loud enough for everyone to hear. Then she said, "Brooke, do you ever get tired of saying project instead of job?" The table went quiet for about 2 seconds. My cousin Ethan gave one of those uncomfortable coughs people use when they wish they were invisible. I looked at Riley and waited to see if she would pull back. She didn't. She leaned forward like she had been waiting all week for this. "I'm serious," she said. "Freelance sounds cute when you're 22, but at 28, don't you want something stable? Something with health insurance? Something where people actually expect you to show up?" My mother glanced at me, then looked down at her plate. My father suddenly became very interested in the corn. I felt the old familiar heat rise in my chest. Not because Riley had said something cruel. She had said cruel things before. What hurt was how rehearsed everyone else was at ignoring it. They had turned my humiliation into background noise. I said I was doing fine. Riley smiled wider. Fine is what people say when they're barely paying rent. A few people shifted in their seats. Aunt Linda said, Riley, maybe not at dinner. But Riley waved her off like she was just being honest. She said she worried about me. That was her favorite trick. She could say the ugliest thing in the room as long as she wrapped it in concern. She asked how much I had made that month. When I didn't answer, she laughed. See, that's what I mean. If it were impressive, you'd just say it. My mother whispered, girls, not tonight. But she said it so softly that it wasn't a boundary. It was a suggestion. Riley ignored it. She turned to my cousin Avery and said, this is why I tell people not to romanticize creative work. Sometimes it's just unemployment with a Canva account. That one got a few nervous laughs. Not real laughter. Not kind laughter. The kind people use when they want to survive an awkward moment without choosing a side. I looked at my parents again. My father pressed his lips together. My mother moved peas around her plate, even though there were no peas on the table, and something inside me went still. I had walked into that house hoping to share good news, but Riley had walked in ready to bury me before I could speak. The strangest part was that I suddenly felt less hurt than clear. For years, I had wondered if maybe I was too sensitive. Maybe Riley was just blunt. Maybe my parents were right when they said sisters pushed each other's buttons. But sitting there while everyone pretended not to hear her tear me apart, I finally understood that silence can be permission. Riley had been handed permission for years, and that night, I had brought something that could take it away. She should have stopped. Riley should have stopped there. Anyone with even a little sense would have felt the temperature drop at the table and changed the subject. But Riley had never known how to stop when she thought she was winning. The more uncomfortable everyone became, the more powerful she looked. She leaned back in her chair and gave me that soft, fake smile she used whenever she wanted to appear reasonable while saying something vicious. Brooke, don't take it personally, she said. I'm just saying that some people are built for pressure and some people are built for hobbies. My fork was still in my hand. I remember staring at it for a second because I needed something ordinary to focus on. A fork, a napkin, the corner of the tablecloth. Anything other than the sound of my sister reducing my life to a joke while my parents let her do it. Uncle Mark tried to change the subject by asking my father about the roof. My father answered too quickly, grateful for the escape. But Riley wasn't done. She cut right through their conversation and said, actually, Dad, this is important. Brooke needs someone to tell her the truth. Mom and Dad have babied her for years. My head snapped up. Babied me? Riley shrugged. You get praised for everything. A logo here, a mood board there. And everyone acts like you're some creative genius. But in the real world, companies care about results. They care about numbers. They care about people who can perform. I could almost feel the envelope in my purse burning against my chair. My name, Luminina Brands. Brand Marketing Manager. $115,000 a year. Benefits. Bonus. Relocation support if needed. Every word of that offer letter was sitting a few inches from my hand while Riley told the table no serious company would ever want me. And she did say that. She said it slowly, like she wanted each word to land. Let's be honest, Brooke. No major company is going to look at someone who's been floating around doing freelance scraps. You're probably going to stay entry-level forever if you even get in. The silence after that sentence was different. It wasn't awkward anymore. It was heavy. Even the kids in the living room seemed quieter. Aunt Linda put her hand over her mouth. Ethan stared at his plate. Avery looked from Riley to me with wide eyes. My mother finally said Riley's name, but it came out weak. Riley didn't even look at her. She kept her eyes on me, waiting for the usual version of Brooke. The Brooke who swallowed it. The Brooke who laughed it off. The Brooke who went home and cried in the car because she didn't want to make the family uncomfortable. But that Brooke wasn't available anymore. I turned to my parents. I gave them one last chance, not with words, just a look. A look that said, are you really going to sit there again? My father looked away first. My mother's eyes filled with something like guilt. But guilt without action is just decoration. That was when I put my palm flat on the table and slammed it down. The sound cracked through the dining room. Forks jumped. A glass rattled. The conversations in the next room stopped completely. Riley flinched, and for the first time that night, her smile broke. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. So that's what you think, I said. Riley blinked. Brooke, calm down. No, I said. You wanted the truth at dinner. Let's have the truth at dinner. My mother whispered my name like she was afraid of what I might do, but I was already reaching into my purse. My fingers closed around the envelope. For 1 second, I thought about putting it back. I thought about waiting. Maybe announcing the job later, privately, away from Riley's poison. But then I looked at her face. That smugness had returned. Not fully, but enough. She still thought I was reacting emotionally. She still thought she controlled the room. So I pulled out the envelope and placed it in the center of the table. It was thick white paper, printed cleanly, with the Luminina brand's logo visible through the folder edge. Riley's eyes dropped to it immediately. What is that? She asked. I slid it toward her. You seem very confident about what serious companies think of me, I said. So read it. She laughed, not her normal laugh. Sharper, more nervous. Is this supposed to be one of your little client contracts? I didn't answer. That made her more irritated. She reached out and snatched the envelope like she was about to expose me. For a second, I watched her enjoy the performance. She wanted the family to see her open it. She wanted the reveal to belong to her. She wanted one more chance to make me small. Then she pulled out the paper. Her eyes moved across the top. Luminina brands. Her smile froze. Her fingers shifted lower. Offer letter. Brand. Marketing manager. Her throat moved like she was trying to swallow something sharp. Then her eyes reached the salary line. $115,000 base salary plus annual bonus and benefits. Her hand began to shake so badly that the paper made a faint rustling sound. And in that moment, everyone at the table understood that the person who had just called me a failure was holding proof that I had already won. The room went still. For a few seconds, no one spoke. The entire dining room seemed to shrink around that piece of paper in Riley's hands. I could hear the hum of the refrigerator from the kitchen. I could hear someone's chair creak. I could hear my own heartbeat, calm and steady in a way that surprised me. Riley read the same lines again. I knew because her eyes kept jumping back to the salary, then to my name, then back to the company logo, as if she believed the words might rearrange themselves if she stared long enough. Aunt Linda was the first person to break the silence. Brooke, she said carefully, is this real? I looked at her. Then at my parents. Signed yesterday, I said. Start date confirmed this morning. My mother's mouth opened, but nothing came out. My father reached for the paper, but Riley held it tighter. Her knuckles had gone pale. No, she whispered. Barely audible, then louder. No, that's not possible. That sentence told me more than she meant it to. Not congratulations. Not how did this happen. Not even I'm sorry. Just that's not possible, because in Riley's mind, my success wasn't just surprising. It was a violation of the story she had spent years telling about me. I stood there and watched her realize that every joke she had made, every eye roll, every little comment about my career being unstable had just been exposed as jealousy. Ethan leaned forward. Wait, Luminina brands? Like, the Luminina brands in Chicago. I nodded. Brand marketing manager. Avery read softly from where she sat closest to Riley. That's huge. The word huge seemed to hit Riley physically. Her breathing changed. She looked around the table, and for the first time that night, everyone was looking at me. Not her. Not with pity. Not with embarrassment. With surprise. Admiration. Even pride. That was the attention she had been trying to prevent. Her chair scraped against the floor as she pushed back. She tried to stand, but her knees buckled before she fully rose. Riley, honey, my mother jumped up. Riley's lips parted, but no real words came out. She clutched the offer letter against the table like it was evidence at a trial. Her face drained of color so fast that even I felt a flicker of concern. Then she fell back into her chair, her head dropping to one side, eyes closed. My mother screamed her name. My father moved behind her and held her shoulders. Aunt Linda rushed to the kitchen for a cold towel. Uncle Mark said, should we call 911? Everyone expected me to panic too. I didn't. I stepped around the table and looked at Riley. Her chest was moving. Her breathing was fast, but steady. Her hand was still clenched around my offer letter. Even unconscious, she looked like she didn't want to let go of it. If she doesn't fully come around in a minute, call 911, I said. But before she starts telling a different story, you all need to understand why this hit her so hard. My mother snapped her eyes toward me. Brooke, what does that mean? I didn't answer right away. Aunt Linda pressed a cold towel against Riley's neck, and within seconds, Riley stirred. Her eyelids fluttered. She made a small sound, not pain, not fear. More like a person waking up inside a nightmare she had created herself. My father said, "Riley, can you hear me?" She nodded weakly. Then her eyes found mine. The look in them wasn't confusion. It was terror. That was when I knew she knew what was coming. Because the job offer wasn't the only secret in that room. It was just the first visible piece of a much uglier pattern. What she had been doing. My mother was still crouched beside Riley, stroking her hair, whispering that everything was okay. I almost laughed at that. Everything was not okay. Everything had not been okay for years. Riley had been poisoning my name in small, careful doses, and my parents had mistaken the symptoms for sister drama. I reached for my phone. Riley saw the movement and tried to sit up straighter. "Brooke," she said, her voice thin and shaky. "Don't." That was the wrong thing to say. Because until that moment, some people might still have believed she was only overwhelmed. But don't is not what an innocent person says when evidence is about to appear. My father's hands slowly dropped from her shoulders. Aunt Linda looked at me. "What did she do?" she asked. I unlocked my phone, opened the folder I had created that morning, and connected it to the small smart display my parents kept on the sideboard for family photos and recipes. The screen lit up. Riley stared at it like it was a loaded weapon. "You all saw what she said about me tonight," I said. "Now you're going to see what she's been saying when she thought no one would find out." The first screenshot appeared on the screen, and the room went so quiet I could hear my mother inhale. It was an email. The subject line read, "Concern about candidate Brooke Hayes." The sender address was anonymous. One of those cheap accounts people make when they think cruelty becomes safer if they hide behind a fake name. I let everyone read the first few lines before I spoke. The email said I was unreliable. It said I missed deadlines, exaggerated my experience, and had a pattern of becoming difficult when given feedback. It said they would strongly reconsider trusting me with a serious brand role. Who sent that? My father frowned. I looked at Riley. She was staring at her lap. That email was sent to the recruiter at Luminina Brands during the final round of my interview process, I said. My mother's hand flew to her mouth. "During your interview?" I nodded. The recruiter forwarded it to me after I signed the offer. She said they weren't influenced by it because my references, test project, and interviews were strong, but she thought I should know someone had tried to interfere. Uncle Mark muttered something under his breath. Aunt Linda stepped closer to the screen. "How do you know it was Riley?" she asked, not accusing me, just needing the full truth. I had expected that question. I tapped to the next screenshot. It showed the email attachment details. A PDF had been attached to the message, supposedly listing complaints about me. The file name wasn't professionally hidden. It read, Brooke Notes Final, and under document properties, the author name was still saved as Riley Hayes MacBook. A sound moved around the table. Not quite a gasp, not quite a groan. Something heavier than both. Riley closed her eyes. She didn't even know enough to scrub the file metadata, I said. Ethan, who worked in IT, leaned forward and said quietly, "That's entirely possible." If she created the PDF from her own laptop and didn't remove the author info, it would show up exactly like that. Riley suddenly lifted her head. "Anyone could have used my computer," she said. Her voice was small but sharp, the same tone she used as a kid when she'd been caught taking something and still wanted everyone to believe there was another explanation. "I knew you'd say that," I said. Then I opened the next image. It was a screenshot from the family group chat from 3 weeks earlier. Riley had written, "Some people are about to be humbled when they find out pretty portfolios don't equal real jobs." Beneath it, she had added a laughing emoji. "Riley," my mother whispered. I kept going. I showed another screenshot. "I feel bad for companies that hire based on vibes." Then another. "Imagine being almost 30 and still hoping a brand notices you." Each one had been posted while I was in the final stages of my interview. I had said nothing then. I had pretended not to see them, but I had saved every single one. Riley's face had turned gray. She looked at our parents and said, "I was just venting." I didn't know she was applying there. I gave a humorless laugh and tapped to the next screenshot. This one was a text Riley had sent me 2 months earlier after seeing my portfolio update online. She had written, "Luminina is not going to care about your little redesign mock-ups, but good luck, I guess." I let the room sit with that. "You knew the company," I said. "You knew the role. You knew the timing. And you sent a fake warning to the recruiter because you were scared I might actually get it." Riley's eyes filled with tears, but they didn't soften me. I had seen too many of her tears arrive exactly when accountability entered the room. My mother stood slowly. "Did you do this?" she asked. Riley shook her head, but the movement was weak. "Mom, I was just worried." "Worried," I repeated. You told a recruiter I was unprofessional. You tried to make a company reject me before they even gave me a chance. Riley looked at me then, and for 1 second, the mask slipped. Anger flashed across her face. You always act like you're better than me, she said. There it was. The truth pushing through the lie. Better than you, I said, or just harder to destroy than you expected? She started crying harder. My father's expression changed in a way I had rarely seen. Not loud anger, not yet. Something worse. Disappointment that had finally found a target. Riley, he said, did you send the email? Riley covered her face. She didn't answer. And in a family like mine, where people had spent years explaining away the obvious, silence had always protected her. But not that night. That night, her silence finally sounded like a confession. What she had said to the family. Aunt Linda stepped back from Riley like she didn't know who she was looking at anymore. Avery said, quietly, Brooke, is there more? I looked at Riley, then at my parents. Yes, I said. That was only what she sent to strangers. Now let's talk about what she sent to the family. I opened the folder labeled Family Chat, and Riley immediately said my name. Not angrily this time. Begging. Brooke, please. I had heard that tone before. She used it whenever consequences got close enough to touch her. But I had spent too many years protecting the feelings of the person who kept hurting me. I tapped the first screenshot. It showed the family group chat from January. Riley had posted a picture of her sales conference badge with the caption, some of us actually have careers that require planes, meetings, and real clients. Under it, she had added, not everyone can stay home making beige logos and call it a hustle. A few relatives had reacted with laughing emojis. No one looked proud of that now. I tapped the next one. In February, after I landed a contract with a boutique food brand, Riley had written, it must be nice to get applause for temporary work. I tapped again. In March, freelance is just unemployed with better branding. Aunt Linda turned to the others. We all saw these, she said. No one answered. That was answer enough. I looked at the table. Some faces were ashamed. Some were defensive. Some looked shocked, though I couldn't understand how. The cruelty had been there in writing. They had just chosen to treat it like entertainment. Every time she posted one of these, I said, someone told me to ignore it. Someone said she was just joking. Someone said I needed thicker skin. But you weren't the ones being turned into the family joke. Riley wiped her face. I didn't think it was that serious, she whispered. You never think anything is serious when I'm the one paying for it, I said. Then I opened the next screenshot. This one wasn't from the family chat. It was an email forwarded to me by my ex-boyfriend, months after we broke up, after he heard I was applying for bigger roles and wanted to apologize for believing things too quickly. Riley had written to him from her own account, pretending to be concerned. She told him I wasn't loyal. She said I was using him for emotional support while chasing attention from men in creative circles. She wrote, I'm only telling you because I think you deserve to know who Brooke really is. I watched my mother read the words. Her face crumpled. My father said, Riley, tell me that's not real. I didn't make him break up with her, Riley said quietly. He already had doubts. I laughed, cold and short. You planted them. Then you watered them. Then you acted surprised when something died. Uncle Mark shook his head. That's low. Riley snapped at him. You don't understand what it's like being her sister. Everyone thinks Brooke is so talented and so calm and so put together. Do you know how exhausting that is? The room stared at her. For once, nobody rushed to comfort her. Being insecure, I said, is not a license to lie. She turned on me then, tears running down her face. You always had something. Scholarships. Teachers liked you. Clients liked you. Mom and Dad bragged about your art when we were kids. I had to fight for attention. I had to sell myself every day. And even then, everyone still asked what Brooke was doing. My father spoke quietly. So you tried to ruin her career? Riley shook her head, but she wasn't denying it anymore. I just wanted people to see she wasn't perfect, she said. You didn't want people to see I wasn't perfect, I said. You wanted people to see me as less than you. There's a difference. The last folder. Then I opened the last folder. I had almost not brought this one, not because Riley didn't deserve it, but because my parents did. The screenshot showed a Venmo transfer from my father to Riley for $2,000. The note read, Chicago interview trip. My mother looked confused at first. Then she went still. Greg, she said, that was the money from the house repair account. My father's jaw tightened. Riley had told him she had 2 interviews downtown and needed a hotel, gas, clothes, and preparation expenses. I tapped to the next image. It was Riley's own archived Instagram story from that same weekend, a blurred casino floor, a cocktail with a tiny umbrella and a caption that read, "Vegas owes me nothing." Avery whispered, "Oh my God." Riley started sobbing again. I was stressed. I needed a break. My father stood so quickly his chair scraped back. "A break? You told us you were trying to get a better job. You told us you needed help." My mother's voice shook. "We worried about you. We thought you were finally trying to move forward." "I was going to pay it back," Riley said. "I swear." "You were going to keep taking until somebody stopped you," I said. "And you thought nobody would stop you because nobody ever has." That sentence landed hardest on my parents. I could see it. My mother pressed one hand to her chest. My father looked older than he had 10 minutes before. Aunt Linda said softly, "This wasn't one mistake. This was a pattern." Riley looked around the room, desperate now, searching for the old exits, sympathy, confusion, tears, someone to blame me for being dramatic. But every door was closing. She finally broke. "Fine," she said. "Fine. I sent the email. I posted the messages. I shouldn't have done it, but none of you get it. I just wanted people to look at me for once." Her voice cracked on the last word. A year earlier, that might have made me feel guilty. That night, it made me tired. "Wanting attention," I said, "does not give you the right to destroy someone else's future." Riley covered her face and cried into her hands. But this time, no one rushed to rescue her from the truth. My mother didn't pull her into a hug. My father didn't tell everyone to calm down. Aunt Linda didn't say we should move past it because family is family. For the first time in my life, Riley was sitting in the consequences of her own choices, and the whole room was finally letting her feel the weight. The question I had always asked myself. I looked at the people around that table and asked the question I had been asking myself for years. When the person hurting you is family, how long are you supposed to stay quiet before keeping the peace becomes helping them hurt you? Riley kept crying, but the room had changed. 10 minutes earlier, her tears would have rearranged everything. My mother would have blamed stress. My father would have said we could discuss it later. Someone would have brought her water, rubbed her back, told me I had made my point. But this time, the tears didn't erase the screenshots. They didn't undo the email. They didn't turn the offer letter back into something Riley could mock. They just sat there on her face, late and useless. She looked at me and said, "I'm sorry. I really am. I was insecure, Brooke. I felt like everyone compared us. I felt like you always had this life I could never reach." I wanted to believe her apology meant something, but there was still too much self-pity in it. Too much focus on how bad she felt now that everyone knew. "I've been insecure too," I said. "I've been rejected from jobs. I've lost clients. I've cried in my car after interviews. I've watched people with more confidence and less skill get opportunities one wanted. But I never emailed your boss to ruin you. I never lied to your boyfriend. I never made the family laugh at you because I couldn't handle my own disappointment." Riley lowered her head. My mother started crying then, quietly. Not the dramatic kind. The kind that comes when someone finally sees the damage they helped create. She stood beside my father and said, "Brooke, we failed you." My father nodded, his voice rough. "We kept calling it sister drama because that was easier than admitting we needed to stop it." I looked at him. For years, I had wanted those words, but hearing them didn't magically fix anything. It only confirmed how long I had been waiting. "No more money," Patricia said to Riley. Riley looked up fast. "Mom." "No," Patricia said, and her voice was stronger than I had heard it all night. "You lied to us. You used us. You tried to sabotage your sister's career. We're done funding excuses." Greg added, "You'll pay back the $2,000. All of it. And tonight, not tomorrow. Not next week. You're going to write a message in the family group chat explaining that the things you said about Brooke were lies driven by jealousy." Riley's face twisted with humiliation. "Dad, please." He didn't move. "And you're going to send a written correction to the recruiter you contacted. You're going to admit that your claims were false." Riley whispered, "That'll make me look insane." Aunt Linda said, "No, Riley. It will make you look accountable." That word seemed to hit her harder than any insult could have. Accountable. The one thing she had avoided her whole life. My mother looked at the rest of the family. "And we owe Brooke an apology too. Every person who laughed, every person who stayed quiet, every person who treated those messages like jokes. We helped make this normal." Nobody argued. Some looked down. Some nodded. Ethan said, "I'm sorry, Brooke." Avery said the same. Aunt Linda touched my arm and told me she should have said something sooner. I appreciated it, but I didn't let it soften the boundary forming inside me. Before I left, Riley wiped her face and looked at me like she expected me to absolve her now that the punishment had been announced. I didn't. "Are you ever going to forgive me?" she asked. I looked at the offer letter still lying on the table, wrinkled now from her shaking hands. That paper was supposed to be a celebration. She had tried to turn it into another wound, but somehow it had become something better. Proof. Not just that I had gotten the job, but that I didn't have to keep shrinking for her comfort. I don't know, I said, and I'm not going to pretend I do just to make this dinner easier. She started crying again, quieter this time. You tried to make me feel small because you couldn't stand feeling small yourself, I continued. You tried to break my confidence, my relationships, and my future. But tonight, all you proved is that I never needed your approval. I picked up the offer letter and placed it back in the folder. Then I turned to my parents. I love you, I said, but I need distance. An apology is a beginning, not a repair. If you want a real relationship with me, it can't be built on pretending this was just a bad night. My mother nodded through tears. My father looked like he wanted to hug me, but for once he didn't force the moment. He simply said, "We understand." I picked up my purse. The dining room was silent again. But this silence was different. It wasn't the cowardly silence that had protected Riley. It was the silence of people finally understanding what their comfort had cost someone else. At the doorway, Riley whispered my name. I turned back. She looked smaller than I had ever seen her, not because I had destroyed her, but because the version of herself she had built on lies had finally collapsed. I didn't think you would actually expose me, she said. I looked at her and said, that was your mistake. You thought my silence meant I had no proof. Then I walked out into the cool neighborhood night, past the porch light, past the quiet driveways, past the life where I had spent years trying to be accepted by people who only noticed my pain when it became impossible to ignore. I sat in my car for a moment with the offer letter beside me and breathed like someone who had finally put down a weight she had been carrying since childhood. What I learned. The lesson I learned that night was simple but painful. Jealousy inside a family doesn't become harmless just because people call it normal. Silence doesn't keep the peace when it protects the person causing harm. And forgiveness without accountability isn't healing. It's just another way to ask the victim to stay quiet. If someone in your family keeps trying to dim your light, you're allowed to stop handing them the switch. You're allowed to tell the truth. You're allowed to build a life where love doesn't require you to be smaller. Have you ever had to stand up to jealousy from someone close to you? Share your story, because someone reading this right now may need your courage to find their own.